Hello, I'm Edward de Chazal from Jurassic Academic, and this presentation is on argument, stance and evaluation. Argument, stance and evaluation. Before we start, let's take a step back and ask the question, what is the purpose of academic discourse? There may be many purposes. I'm going to suggest three today. First, to inform, to present information. Second, to explain, what does it mean? Third, to persuade. Now the third is particularly crucial because academic texts, or a great deal of academic discourse, is about persuasion. It's not just the presentation of dry, objective facts. It's about persuading the audience. And we do this through argument, through the presentation of our stance, and through our evaluation. Let's look at each of these in turn, starting with this umbrella idea of persuasion. So, as I say, writers persuade through their arguments. And persuasion is not objective, it's subjective, it's people-based, it's people-driven, it's people's arguments, people's interaction, people's discussions. These are subjective. Doesn't mean they're bad, it means they're interesting. Everyone's different and we all have different ways of reacting to arguments. We also have our own identity. My identity is unique to me, yours is unique to you. That's interesting. That's interesting for all of us in our academic context. Our identity drives our argument, our stance, our evaluation. So the arguments we put forward persuade others in our community that what we have is interesting, valid, worthwhile, useful. I present through my identity my stance. This is how I stand in relation to whatever issue I'm talking about. And lastly, my evaluation is my response, my critical response to the material. Let's look at each of these in turn. Argument first. An argument is built on a claim. So a claim is the building block of an argument. And a claim is simply the statement that I want you, my audience, to accept. This statement is not a fact. It's a statement that can be supported by evidence. For example, students learn better when they negotiate the syllabus. That's not a fact, it's an argument. I can provide evidence, I can research it, I can provide good supporting arguments to show why this is convincing. Ultimately, you will buy my argument, or maybe you won't. Or you think, it's quite good, but I still need more convincing. So my claim, in this example, students learn more effectively when they negotiate the syllabus, that's the building block of my argument. Stance. So stance is literally how we stand. And we all stand differently, and we stand differently in relation to the same ideas, political ideas, economic ideas, ecological ideas, whatever they are. We have different stances. Our person's stance is unique. Our stance doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. We have our big political stances in our countries. If we hold these, they take years to develop. They're influenced by our family, our parents, our friends, our teachers, what we read, the media, our experience. They're very slow burning and they can change over our lifetime, and they're very interesting. Evaluation. Now this is related to the others. Like the others, it's subjective. Evaluation can be done quite quickly. We use criteria to evaluate things. Evaluation. Evaluation is related to the others. At the heart of the word is value, evaluation. So we give something a value. Now the value we give it is subjective. I may give it a different value to you. Now this value could be in terms of its reliability, validity, cost, usefulness, influence, effectiveness, beauty. And we can ask questions like, is it useful? Is it influential? Is it expensive? Is it feasible? Will it work? Is it significant? Is it relevant? Is it valid? Is it reliable? These are evaluative questions, and by answering them we present to our audience our evaluation. And we can evaluate lots of things. For example, a new design for a building or a city square. We can evaluate this using criteria. We can evaluate a new hypothesis. We can evaluate a new method of doing something, a new piece of research. Let's look now at the text. You can see the text online, and in this text I've picked out in blue the main arguments of the text. This is the building block of the text. The first is a claim. There has been significant change in recent decades in the way media proprietors view their audiences. Again, that's not a fact, it's a claim, and that's the basis of their argument. The argument continues, again, this change might not be as recent as we think. And towards the end of the text, the role and relevance of the investigative journalist increasingly is being challenged. So these are the writer's points of argument. And within this text, they also evaluate. The evaluation is in red, and they talk about Ed Murrow, his revealing words, his little influence. He had little influence, so they evaluate Murrow's work. So, what I've done next is to pick out some key statements in the text, and by noticing these lead to our writer's stance. We can work out their stance using this evidence. Let me read these out to you. There has been a change in the way media owners see their audiences. They now see them as consumers. This change is not new. 50 years ago, Ed Murrow criticised the media for entertaining rather than informing. This view is still relevant. Now, celebrity news is powerful. Ed Murrow's criticisms didn't change anything. People want to be entertained. Therefore, it is now harder for investigative journalists to operate. Now, I've got this body of statements, and I'm going to ask some questions. Do the authors believe that there has been a change in the media-audience relationship? Yes, they do. When was this change recognised? 50 years ago. Do the authors like this change? Not very much. Are they worried about the role of investigative journalists? Yes, they are. So these answers to these questions provide evidence for the author's stance. So the authors are not very happy with the changing media-audience relationship. They support the role of investigative journalists. However, we must remember that all of this is subjective. Another writer may argue, actually, no, it's not changing. 50 years ago was the same. Audiences haven't changed. They want to be entertained now. They wanted to be entertained 50 years ago. That's an alternative view. Both views are potentially valid, interesting. They both require evidence and argument. So, in this talk, I've presented argument, stance, and evaluation. They're all related. They're all subjective in that they're people-based. They're not facts, they're not proved, they're ideas, claims, arguments, evaluation, and they differ. Mine is equally valid to yours. Yours is equally interesting to mine. We can all evaluate the same things in different ways. Argument, stance, evaluation. I'm Edward de Chazal. Thank you very much for listening.